see some of the people I met last year and some of the new faces. It's always fun to be back here, and it's even more fun for me to talk about what's going to be happening. And I think we all know that there's a lot of things going on that are extremely difficult to make sense of. And I get a lot of comments from people that I see this happening, I see that happening, I read things in the paper, and I don't really know if it's important or not important. If this really is something that's going to okay, that's a little bit better. I think then it's, I don't know if this trend is going to be an important one or not. It may be something I can just sort of forget about. So what I try to do is I try to, as Tony said, act as a guide and try to point out some of those things that are happening that I think are going to be very important to understand and very important to take action on. And so starting out with 5 areas that I think we all have to be very aware of. And these are broad categories, and I'll talk about each of these in a lot more detail. But the first one is the workforce itself is changing quickly, deeply, and permanently. And I think we really have to understand the depth and level of change in the workplace and the workforce itself. The people that you're trying to recruit and the people that you will be working with as we move into the future. The second one is the capability growth. And we all have more capability today than we know that we have. We all have more capability than we know what to do with. Part of our challenge is how do we deal with all the capability that we have. It's not that we don't have enough knowledge and capability. We actually have more than we can deal with. So we have to figure out how to manage that. And then there's automation and robotics, and it's going to have a profound impact on our society. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then agility, and the only way to survive for the next decade or so is to be extremely agile. And I'll go into what I mean by that. And the last piece is data and data analysis, which is really the fundamental building block, I think, of everything we're doing and everything we're talking about. Without data, without the knowledge that the capability growth gives us, we can't make good decisions. And now we can make much better ones. We actually have data about things that 5 years ago even, we couldn't give you an answer about. There was no way. It was subjective. It was opinion. I can actually give you an answer now because we actually have the data. So let's dive into this a little bit and let's look at the global labor supply. And McKinsey recently, last year, did a study on what they thought was going on with the labor force in general in the world. It's a global survey. And basically they said that 38 to 40 million, there's 38 to 40 million fewer people in the highly qualified category that most of us are looking for today. And the reason for that is most of us are looking for people in this category. We're looking for people with advanced degrees, with a degree, at least a degree, often advanced degrees, and often specialized training beyond that advanced degree. We're looking for people that are highly skilled and, in many cases, experienced. And there's very significant shortage of those people. The educational system hasn't kept up with that. The society hasn't recognized the speed that this change was coming. And we're really woefully under-equipped by populations with the skills that they need to be successful in the future. And so they're predicting that we're going to have about a 13% more demand for these people than there is a supply for them. And if you're a recruiter, and if you're looking for talented, skilled people, particularly if you're looking for them with a particular mindset, innovation or creativity or something like that, you're probably having a very difficult time finding those people. And it's going to get worse, not better. If you talk to any technology company today, every one of them, I don't know of any technology company that's saying, we're having no problem recruiting talented talent. Every one of them is struggling to find people. In this next category, those with just a high school degree, we're also going to have fewer than we need. And believe it or not, when we say a high school degree, what they're really saying here is someone that finished high school and probably learned some skill or trade. Someone who can be in a skilled trade, a plumber, a carpenter, a mechanic. Someone who's got a trade that they can actually earn money doing for people. It's not just somebody that went to high school and left school. That's not going to be enough. That's going to be the people in this next category. And this category is all of those low-skilled workers that have high school education only or less, and the ones that staff a large percentage of organizations today, like the fast food industry, the restaurant business, the transportation industry. These are the fundamental people that are in that industry, and they're predicting right now that they're not going to be needed in the future because of automation. I'll talk more about that. But there's going to be at least 11% oversupply of those people within a decade. So you look at this, and you can download the whole survey from McKinsey. I'll make these slides available to Rebecca. But this is, if you believe the survey, I've had people tell me I don't believe this. Well, that's your choice. But again, data is data, and there's always room for error in this data. But even if this is off by a significant amount, it's still a pretty scary story. And I think we're going to find, politically and economically, some huge challenges over the next few years as large percentages of people are displaced and really cannot find work. We're seeing this in Europe right now. If you look at the unemployment rate in Spain, it's somewhere, depending on who you talk to, 40 to 50% unemployment in Spain. If you look at Italy, it's somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe a little better. If you look at other countries in Europe that have a very rigorous union that doesn't allow change, it hasn't allowed flexibility, they're suffering a tremendous amount of action right now in the youth unemployment, which is absolutely huge. So it's a political problem, it's an economic problem, it's an educational problem, it's a problem that tackles every single segment of society. We're going to be hearing about that and feeling it for a long time. There's also Indeed, and are you familiar with the job board called Indeed? It's like Seek, I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And it's in Australia now, it's been here for a couple of years. But they recently did a survey, and they looked at the jobs that were posted on the job board and the number of people who searched for those jobs. And in those categories there were far fewer people searching than there were jobs listed. Very simple analysis. Gives you a really good, simple idea of what the labor market looks like. So if you're looking for a computer and math person, if you're looking for a healthcare or technical professional, not anywhere near enough of them came to Indeed looking for a job. Just not enough people came for the number of jobs that they had. On the other hand, on the other side of it, if they put up one of those lower skill jobs, they had, in some cases, hundreds of percent more people looking for a job than other jobs, which gives you an idea that sort of validates the things you say. This is real-time data, very recent data. So this is just all adding up to saying we have a problem, and we're going to have to do something about this. We've really got these two worlds that are colliding head-on, I think, in the workforce, and this is the morphing workforce kind of. We've got the people over here, which are probably most of us, which have grown up in this world, which was a pretty traditional world that's been around for at least 100 years. And it was about having a career path, getting a good job in a good company, staying there for a while, getting that regular paycheck, having some sort of benefits that come with being in that position, paying taxes to the government, having a predictable income source, and having the camaraderie of colleagues at work. That's sort of been something we've all strived to have. But when you start looking at the younger generation, you start looking at people, particularly in their 20s, and if we go down into the children in the 16, 17, 18-year-old range, that's a whole other story. And they're over on this side of it. And there's a spectrum all the way across here. But many of them are all the way over here, where they want a lot of choice in what they do. They want lots and lots of flexibility. They don't want to just do one thing. They want to do multiple things. They might want to do something for a few months and then something else for a few months. All the stuff we more or less look at. We all pretty much look at that and say, that's not good. They're not sticking to it. They're not learning one thing. They're not going in depth. They're too frivolous. They've moved around too much. All the things as recruiters we say are negative, they say these are all good, positive things. This is how you're agile, and this is how you live in a world that's constantly changing. And so they kind of get it intuitively. They've lived it. And we're going at it from a paradigm that's very different than that. And And so they're saying, I've got to be flexible. I've got to go do a whole lot of things. I need to constantly learn new things. Because, gee, last week I learned the BlackBerry, and now they're gone, I have to learn the iPhone. So, nothing stays around very long. I've got to constantly be learning and changing. And this side hasn't gotten that. They still think the world might go back, or it's just a temporary glitch, or they're just young kids and they'll look like me in a while. What's going to happen? Okay? And they expect to get paid for what they do, not for having lived a long time. And they look at a lot of us that expect that, well, I'm 45, I should earn more than somebody 35. And they're saying, you're 45, but you haven't done anything. And I'm 35, and look at what I can do. And so I should get more money than you. And we have trouble with that, or a lot of us do. And they have trouble understanding why we have trouble. Because to them, it's just a logical concept. I was on the airplane coming over here, and I just happened to sit beside a young guy, 24 years old, from Adelaide, who was just returning from job interviews in the U.S., where he had 2 interviews, one with Apple and one with Flipboard. Anyone here familiar with Flipboard? It's an iPad app that allows you to look at news. You swipe your finger and it flips over different pages. They call it Flipboard. I said, so what did you think? And he said, well, I'm really torn between these two worlds. Apple is more or less here. Despite making cool products, it's a big hierarchical company. Okay? And it's pretty much over here. And he said, I had this interview there. Nice place. The recruiter was good. I said, what am I going to be doing? He said, I can't tell you. He said, what department will I be in? You'll be in special projects. I said, what do special projects mean? He said, I don't know. It's part of Apple's secretive culture, but it's also very non-Gen Y, which is about transparency and openness and flexibility. None of that they have. These are the conditions, and he has a job offer from Apple that made him. And he's a top-notch coder, programmer, who's only worked for himself. He's never had a job. He's been out of uni for a few years, but he's a web developer, and he's worked for himself in Adelaide successfully, got a small business. He said, now I think I might try working in a company. It'd be great to go to the U.S. for a few years. And then he said, Flipboard, on the other hand, is 300 people. He got to sit and spend almost half a day with the owner and founder of the company. He said it was like a big team meeting. We all got together, we talked, we had lunch. I'm really attracted to it. I love it. The work I'm going to do is perfect. I was saying, so what's the challenge? And the challenge is us. He feels the weight of pressure to go the more respectable route with Apple. And I think he probably feels it from his parents. He probably feels it from society in general. And he's genuinely struggling over his heart wants to go here, and his head is sort of saying, I don't know if I should go here or not. Hopefully he'll go with the Flipboard offer. I think he will. But it's really a challenge for a lot of young people to make that call, because they know where they should go. But we put a lot of pressure on them to not make those decisions. And I think we have to understand that and try to be a little more flexible in how we approach these things. And I don't think there is a right or a wrong path. We don't know where the world's going. I think what you have to say is, whatever path you go down will be a learning experience. And they're rarely fatal. Okay? You'll always be able to recover from whatever path you go down. So just let it go down the path. Okay? This is a survey that's done several times a year by a large recruiting company in the U.S. And they survey all of their clients. And they ask them, do you think it's a candidate-driven market in blue? Or do you think it's an employer-driven market in red? And you can see, and this was 2011, the red was fairly significant. 44% said it was an employer-driven market, meaning we called the shots. We could pretty much dictate the terms of employment. And look at it in the first half of 2014. The red is disappearing. Right? And that's in what? A 3-year period. The change is so rapid. And 3 years ago you could say, oh, I tell people what they're going to earn, what they're going to do. They don't have any problem. We're able to hire people. It's not happening. And more companies are now saying, we just have to do whatever they ask. If they want to work part-time, we have to let them work part-time. If they want to work from home, we have to let them work from home. If they want to bring in their own devices to work, we have to let them do that rather than supplying it from the company to them. So a lot of these things that are very hard for big companies to deal with are now becoming sort of expectations on the workforce. So the workforce is changing rapidly. Self-employment is booming. And self-employment is booming. Why? A couple of reasons. One is young people say, why would I go work for a company? And there's really no benefit in the long term. They're probably going to make me redundant at some point in the future. They're probably not going to let me learn the skills that will make me robust. I'll be stuck in some narrow level job for too long, so I'll erode my skills and I won't be able to be more employable. And if I go out on my own, yeah, it's a little bit scary, but I'm adjusting my lifestyle. So I think last year, if you were there, I talked about some of those lifestyle changes. They're not buying homes. Young people are not buying houses at all. They're not buying cars. If they do buy cars, they're buying used cars. Frequently, they're living in urban areas and they're using car services where you can rent a car for an hour or for a weekend. They're just not saying, I don't want to own a car. Sometimes I need one, but I don't own it. I'll just buy it when I need it. Right? So lots of things are changing, which means they don't have the same pressure to take on the kinds of work that we did, often because we wanted to buy a house and a car. And we had to have a mortgage, and we had to have payments over time, and you needed security to do that. And these young people are saying, are adjusting their life, saying, I don't really know that I want all that stuff. I want the flexibility to be able to say, okay, I've got a flat in Sydney, I'm going to move to Adelaide, I can get rid of my flat and get it. I have to sell a house and go through the whole hassle of that. So it's a very different and much more flexible world. But self-employment is becoming the norm. And one of my long-term predictions is that most people will be self-employed and a small percentage will be permanent employees within 20 years. I think you're probably going to see 70 to 80% of the workforce at some point in their career being a freelancer or a contractor or a consultant or doing some sort of work for themselves or working in very small boutique firms of 2 or 3 people. And I think you're seeing a huge rise in tiny companies. I don't believe I put it in this presentation, but I have a graph showing what's happening in the number of companies that are listing on stock exchanges, and it's plummeting. The graph kind of goes like this, and race right now. Very few companies are going public. They're staying small, they're staying private, because they don't need huge amounts of cash. Even Facebook didn't need to go public. They went public to pay back their initial investors. So they invested quite a lot of money. But in Facebook's annual report, I love it, it says in their prospectus, it says, what are they going to do with this money that they raised from the stuff from their IPO? They said, we have no need for this money. This money will be invested in securities and hopefully bring a return to our investors. But they had no need for the money at all. Once they paid the initial investors off, they had no need for the money. So now they're not building massive equipment and plants and factories. All the money is up here, is intellectual. It doesn't cost that much. That's a different world that we're in. Mobile work is also booming, and more of us are working from anywhere, from home, from a coffee shop, from a car, from the park. It doesn't make any difference where you work anymore because most work is done via some sort of computer-enhanced process, and you can do that pretty much anywhere. So that has implications for workplaces. It has implications for real estate. It has implications for the tax base of cities like Sydney. And if more and more people are working at home, and there's going to be less need for office space over time, what happens to all this office space? And is this going to become residential space, and who's going to pay the property taxes that support the public services? So again, an economic, a political, and a social problem, all emerging from everything I've done. And they're going to present some interesting challenges for all of us to think about. Right now, it's in the U.S., I don't know here in Australia, but I think it probably is quite similar from my talking to people and experience here. But it's about a third working in an office, about a third people working from home, and about a third people working in some kind of co-working space or cafe. And yesterday, I met 5 or 6 people that are working in co-working spaces, and there's quite a few of them sprung up in Sydney now, and there's quite a few in Melbourne. And these are kind of places somewhat like a coffee shop, but they're more like an office environment, where there's desks or tables where you can put your computer and have Wi-Fi, and you can actually get work done. What's interesting in that environment is you're not interacting with the same people from the same organization all the time. You're being mixed with people from all different kinds of organizations. So it increases creativity, it increases your exposure to different ideas. And the ones that I've interviewed, I interviewed several, I went to several co-working spaces to interview people in those spaces about why they went there. And the number one reason I got was, I learn a lot being there. I learn from people that are in different industries. I learn from people that are doing things I never thought about, I didn't even know people did. I'm learning all these new things. Where if I go to the office every day, I'm with the same people every day, and they all do the same thing. We're all accountants, or we're all teachers, or we're all, whatever we are. And I never get to see anybody, I never get a different idea. And so this is a really stimulating place for people. And so I think you're going to see mobile work, co-working spaces grow. I think you're going to find the way we work drastically change in the really near future. It is already. I mean, even here with the new open plan offices is a major change in how people work from just 3 or 4 years ago, when everybody would have been in a cubicle or some sort of an office. So even now we're seeing it. I said we have greater capability than we ever knew we had, and we have that capability because of computing power. If you think about it, back in the last century, we augmented our muscles with things like steam trains and bulldozers and trucks and all sorts of equipment that could move and carry things. So we became much stronger than we were as individual human beings. And we can move mountains, literally, today, easily. Where before it took decades and 1 million slaves to move a mountain. Right? And now we're able to do the same thing with our head. We have software that now makes us smarter. And all the software we have, all these tools out there that you have access to, Google, Bing, Expedia, travel sites, real estate sites, these things make you smarter and more knowledgeable. Think about what you knew about, let's say, the real estate market in Sydney if you wanted to buy a flat here 10 years ago. It would have been really hard. You'd have to go to some real estate agent, and all you would ever know is what they told you. Now you can go on websites, you can find out everything, you can competitively price everything, you can get ratings of this place is terrible, this place is great. So look at the knowledge that you have, and how much smarter you are, and what a better decision you can make now because of that information that's out there. So imagine how we can do that in all kinds of work that we do. You don't have to do things we used to do or reinvent things that were already reinvented. You can go out to the internet now and find out what other people have done in that same area. And you can maybe even get in touch with those people. You can see what people that didn't like what they did say about what they did. You can get a multiple of opinions instantaneously on that stuff. And so this is like phase 1 of getting smarter. Lots of access to lots of data. As I said earlier, that's sort of overwhelming. There's too much stuff out there. I just want to buy a book. I don't want to know about every book ever written in the history of the world. I just want this particular thing. And so now the phase 2 that we're moving into is tools that interpret that data, that make sense about that data, and that begin to categorize it and so forth. Eventually we'll get into tools that will actually predict what you want, and will actually be able to tell you ahead of time where you should go and what you should do. And we've got some early versions of that as well. Amazon, if you use Amazon, it's got a very early primitive version of that. It recommends books or videos for you to look at or read based on your previous behavior. Well, that's a primitive version. It's going to get a lot more sophisticated in the near future. And I'll show you some things that are coming. Okay? The robots, I think this is the most frightening or exciting, depending on your point of view, aspect of what's happening out there. I did a workshop last year in San Francisco, and I had a roboticist come. This is a profession that didn't exist a few years ago. People whose academic work is to study and build robots. And the amount of progress that's been made in the area of robots is frightening. They can do just about anything. I just read this morning before I came here in the news that there's a hotel chain called Aloft, A-L-O-F-T, and it's a very edgy, modern, Gen Z hotel chain. It's extremely modern, extremely cool. You check in with your iPhone or your Android. They don't have any front desk. You don't have a key for your room. You just use your phone to get in your room. And they now have a bellman who's a robot. And you just say, I forgot my toothbrush, and this robot will bring it up to your room and give you the toothbrush. Or the soap, or whatever, a pillow, or whatever it is you need, the robot will go get it and bring it up to you. And so they don't need any people to do that. That's just one simple example. But you're going to see lots more of that kind of thing. And you already have robots everywhere. We just don't think about it in that way. They're in your car. They're in pretty much everything you do. They're software robots. And they're things that go and do things, control things, regulate things for you that we don't even think about as robots, but they really are. And before your car would not function like it functions today without these robots. There's about 38 computers in the average car built last year. It's pretty amazing. 38 computers in that car. Everything from your windows to your oil pressure to your valve timing, everything is all done through these robots. So this is going to replace a lot of people. Warehouses are going to go. Most transportation industry is going to be gone. Automated. You're not going to have anybody driving trains or trams or buses. You're not going to have anybody probably even flying airplanes. In fact, Oxford did a study last year on the professions most likely to be automated and most likely not to be. And these at the bottom are the most likely to be automated. Telemarketing. And someone told me this morning that they just read in the paper that Telstra just said that they were going to, what was the time frame on that?
5 years. 5 years.
5 years. That they would be virtually no one in their call center. Right? And I think a lot of companies are pretty close to that already today. It's virtually all automated. All your online help is through either a voice system, someone talking to you that's not a human, or just through the fact that you can go online and do things online yourself. So telemarketing, accountants and auditors. If you look at accounting as well, it's a skilled profession. That's a good job. Maybe not such a good job. And again, if it's something that has rules, if it has something that has a process and a set of rules to it, if it's something that can be done in a very tangible way, like adding up numbers and manipulating figures, then computers are absolutely outstanding at that. They're far better than we are. And they add faster and better than we do. And so accounting, to me, is a no-brainer to be bought. Now, that will upskill the job. There'll have to be people that make decisions about what you do with that money or where and how we get that money. But they won't have to be the people who are adding it up and putting it in the books and printing out the balance sheets and the P&L statements. Retail salespeople, doomed. You're just going to walk out of the store, read your purchases, and be charged automatically with your phone or whatever smart devices you've got. You don't even have to scan your groceries. There's a couple of experimental grocery stores now that use a little RFID chip like on your credit card, and those chips are on each product. And when you walk out of the store, it just adds up instantaneously as you walk out everything in your bag and charges your credit card. So you don't have to go to a scanner, you have to wait in line, you just go in the store and walk out. It feels like theft until you get the bill. But there's just so many things that you can say, that's really cool. But think of how many people work in that business. How many people, scan and bag groceries. And what level of education are those people? Usually pretty low down on that skill. And those are the people that we're not going to need in the future. If we look at word processors and typists, I thought they were already gone. I didn't even know we had any. And then machinists, real estate agents, that's an interesting one. And again, what I was just saying before, real estate has really moved to an online world. It's pretty much like the travel agent. Travel agents still exist, but there's a lot fewer of them than there were 20 years ago or 10 years ago, because that was highly automated, and you can go to websites, book your own tickets. You don't need a travel agent unless you want to take a 30-day Mediterranean cruise or something, and then maybe you'll use a travel agent. So they became specialty. Same with real estate. They'll become specialty people. And commercial pilots, which is a bit scary for most of us. But if you realize right now, most airplanes today, pilot does nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, I talked to a pilot on United, and he said, we're not allowed to fly the airplane. He said, the company will fire us if we fly the plane unless it's some emergency, because we really screw up the gas mileage. The computer saves them a lot of money. It flies absolutely precisely, and we don't. So, these are the professions that won't be. Recreational therapists, dentists, athletic trainers, the clergy, chemical engineers, editors. If you look at those jobs are jobs that are dealing with us at a higher level, a spiritual level or a psychological level. There are things that it's going to be a very long time, probably before computers get to be able to do that very well. But even things like coding, programming, it's all going to be automated within a few years. A lot of coding already is automated. So even though we have a huge skill shortage in coding, and I see a lot of academic institutions saying, oh, we should start churning out more people who can write code. I'm not so sure if you write up in the future that's a smart thing to do, because many of those jobs are going to be automated for sure. We have to move people up into these other sorts of professions that right now today, if you look at these, some of these are very good paying, but many of those jobs are terrible. They don't pay well at all. And they're considered to be relatively low-paid jobs. And yet those are the jobs that are going to survive. And the jobs that we consider the most high-paid and challenging may be jobs that become automated to a large degree. I've been doing a lot of work in the healthcare industry recently, and they're automated incredibly. I mean, it's things I didn't think of nursing. Big chunks of nursing are being automated in terms of passing out pills and giving information and moving patients from point A to point B, or monitoring the status of your health. That's all being turned over to automated equipment, which means now a nurse has to become a counselor, a guide, a whole different set of skills for a nurse. They have to become much more a bedside human being, and not this efficient, technical kind of machine that some nurses have become, because the robots can do that now. So there's a big shift not only in what professions are going to be automated, but what professions do. And so things that you used to have to do because it was the only way to do it, teaching is a great example. Because many of you are in the education space, knowledge, information, you don't need to teach them. It's on the computer. There's no need to teach somebody, sit up there and lecture somebody on world history. They can read world history, they can see videos of world history, they can look at interactive maps of world history. And what the teacher can do is help them understand world history. And say, so what did all this mean, and what did this lead to? And what was the outcome of these things? And were those good or bad outcomes? And how do we define good and bad? It moves into a whole other realm where a lot of teachers are completely lost, because they don't think at that level either. They're very knowledgeable, they know everything about world history, but they've never themselves probably really thought about the whys and the whats and the implications of all that. So there are many fields, biology, chemistry. Do we even need to have people teaching those? Because those are subjects that are very, very easily and probably much more engaging online with videos and online simulations and so forth. And maybe a teacher can run some hands-on laboratories or whatever, but it's a different role. And then things like philosophy and history or religion, those are things where people are necessarily. But I think we have to really think about what's changing education, what could be automated or roboticized in education, and what shouldn't be or can't be. And those are different decisions than the kind we usually make, where we just assume that teachers do this. I think we have to re-examine deeply what teachers do and what their role is. And I don't think we've done that very well, and we're not educating the young people very well to deal with this future. I think that's the real challenge. When they leave school, are they capable, do they have any equipment to really deal with the challenges that this kind of world is going to face looking into? And from what I look at in the U.S., I can only speak to the U.S. really, woefully under-equipped to do that. Their education was perfect for the 20th century. It was a great education for them to go work for, Holden and make cars. But it was not a good education to deal with this world today. So you need to be very agile in recruiting. I would say you need to be agile in general in everything that you do these days. Because nothing is fixed. Everything is moving really, really rapidly. And so by agile, I mean, can you meet your customers' needs in a way that meets or exceeds their expectations? And you have to define what customer is. Is it a student? Is it a parent? Is it society? Who is your customer? We all have multiple customers, but who are they? And what are their expectations? And am I able to meet those expectations or exceed those expectations? Do you have systems that are built to be flexible, that can change with the times as they change? And we know they're going to change constantly. And right now, most systems are pretty rigid. This is how we do it. That's it. And everything is an exception. We have to make this exception and that exception. Everything requires 4 days of discussion and 3 signatures before we can do it. It's an exception. We've got to figure out how do we make this so we don't have to go through that process. How can we build flexibility into it? How can we be proactive? Who focuses on the future and looks at that and talks about that and really helps people understand the changes? And how do you implement and use technology to make all that happen? How do you leverage the tremendous capability we have in computing? And I think we have to look at it as a huge advantage and benefit, but it changes what we do. And I think that's why we don't like it. I mean, the mechanical tools were resisted. There was a famous folk song in America about John Henry, the steel driving man. You ever heard that here in Australia? It's a poem written about a laborer on the railroad who said, I can drive spikes into the railroad faster than the new robot they had, the new machine. And he outdid the machine. He actually beat it by about 3 spikes and then had a heart attack and dropped dead. And it's just a moral lesson for young kids about the machine age. And it was like, yes, sometimes you can be smarter than the machine, but it might kill you. So it might be wiser to live with the machine and learn how to be a partner with the machine and not fight the machine. I think that applies to computers as well. And then you've got to consistently look at how do we lower costs, lower the staff we need to do whatever it is we need. One of the drivers, one of the economic drivers is going to be doing more with less. And there's no question in my mind that, in teaching, again, I'll use education, we have this thing that you can have a class of a certain size. Well, they're doing MOOCs, if you've heard of those, massive open online courses, which are basically teaching things like computer coding or relatively straightforward subjects that you can teach, one professor can teach to thousands of people at the same time. And there's no need to have hundreds of teachers teaching the same thing over and over again. Some good, some bad, and some mediocre. Right? So you can find the best teachers and leverage those best teachers through various online tools to teach thousands and thousands of people these things. And then maybe you can have tutors or people that are on a smaller scale that help counsel and coach people and help them take them through actual problems, but not dump the knowledge in, which we call it. So that's why you can leverage a lot more, but a lot less. There's a new university that just came out in San Francisco, just starting. They use professors from anywhere in the world, mainly professors who are not busy at the moment, to teach courses for students. They might have 3 professors teaching one course. It's all virtual. They have no physical campus. They've got their first class. I think it's 30 or 40 students. It's just starting, first one. The course material is extracted from a whole bunch of already existing material. But the philosophy is all of this stuff is already out there. It's already been invented. How do we find it and use it and repurpose it? And how do we leverage resources around the world to deliver this to students? And they've partnered with a traditional university to actually grant the degree, because they don't have the actual credentials yet to do that. So it's an experiment. Who knows? There's a lot of experiments going on right now in the U.S. in higher education around for-profit, non-profit, and so forth kinds of delivery methods. But they all have one thing in common. They leverage technology very heavily. They are largely virtual, or have a big virtual component. And 3, they're highly flexible in how they go about it. You don't have to take courses in a certain order. You don't have to take exactly the same thing everybody else takes. There's a lot of flexibility. They're living this model already. And this is what we have to kind of think about. And it's very experimental, and parts of it won't work. And there's definitely flaws in all of these systems. But we never learned without flaws. The first machines were pretty bad. And our first systems aren't going to be very good either. But you're never going to learn if you don't create them and use them and learn from them to make them better. And one of the biggest things that I encourage everybody to do is experiment and try everything. You don't know what's really going to stick and what's not going to stick. And by trying these things, you're expanding your mind and your capabilities. And you're challenging yourself a little bit to do things that you didn't do before. If you're fearful, you should really do it. Because you'll get over your fear if you really understand these things. I'm not going to drive a car, it's too scary. Lots of people in the early part of the century wouldn't go near a car. Women wouldn't drive a car. Not for women. Only men can drive cars. And, it took a long time before we got to the point where most of us drive and we're not afraid of it. And so you've got to get there, you have to get there faster than that. So there's some trends and technologies that are important for recruiting, and they're also important for life in general. And the first one is the social media. And I know in Australia, Facebook is feared or disliked or only used for close family and friends, and I think that really needs to change. When you look at the world use of social media, Australia is almost at the bottom. And that's going to really hurt Australia, because the future is about this connected social world. And I think everybody has to get their Facebook account and start to experiment with it. It's that fear thing that I told you about. Get over the fear. We're very concerned with privacy. I think you have to realize that you don't have a lot of privacy and won't have in the future. And I know people don't like to hear this, and we try to legislate it, and we try to control it, but it ain't going to work. If you go to Google right now, how many of you have a smartphone, an iPhone or an Android? How many of you use Google to do searching? I can go online. I can't, but you can all go online. And you can look at, if you go to Google, the regular google.com, I believe it's /location, you can see everywhere you've been in your life since you've had that phone. Every street you've been on, every airplane you've flown in, every country you've been in, it tracks everywhere you've ever been. You never turned the thing on, you didn't do a thing, you just have a phone. But it knows where. That's how the police can find missing people. They get onto this service and they track your phone. The last time this person had the phone, they were here. And after they were here, we never saw them again. So something must have happened here. So this is what you can do. So, those things, that's just one simple example of how you track. Every one of these services has more information about you than you could ever imagine. And you didn't give it to them, and you didn't do anything about it, and you can't control it. So being afraid of Facebook is, kind of like being afraid of matches. It's not going to burn you that badly. It's not a bonfire. And you need to get in there and start to use these tools and experiment. They're valuable for learning. They're valuable for education. They're valuable for social communication. They're valuable for recruitment. If you're trying to recruit people more and more people are on these tools, and that's where you're going to find them and engage with them. So if you're not using these tools, you're missing a whole chunk of life, really. A whole chunk of life is growing very rapidly. So you need to be on. If you go to Asia, and if you really look at, where's the future economic growth, where's the future expansion coming from, where's the innovation coming from? It's obviously all going to come out of Asia. It's coming out of Asia because they don't have a regulated labor market. They don't have very strict laws around things like we do. They don't have any laws about privacy. You can pretty much do anything you want. It's like the Wild West in some ways, and that's okay, because that's where you get innovation. And guess what? They are the world's largest users of social media. And every single person in China is using their own version of Facebook. They don't use Facebook. They use Baidu and other Chinese versions of these social networks, vastly larger than Facebook. They have almost 2 billion users of the Chinese website, and Facebook has maybe approaching 900 million. That almost twice the size of Facebook. So they're on all these tools, they're using all these tools, and if we don't use them, we're going to lose out to Asia more than we are anyways. So we have to get really with it. If you're trying to find people using traditional tools today for recruiting purposes, I think you're finding some very sobering lessons out there. Number one is that traditional search is getting harder and harder. So you used to be able to go to a search box and type in technical writer or whatever, and a whole bunch of people might show up. Well, you can't do that. You won't get anything much anymore. Or what you'll get will be low quality or not the kinds of people you want. So people went to LinkedIn. They said, oh, LinkedIn, we'll see. That's the savior. But what's happening is all of those people in that top tier of education, many of them are removing themselves from LinkedIn and saying, I am so tired of being called up by recruiters. I get 7 or 8 phone calls a week or a day from recruiters trying to recruit me or emails that I don't answer the email that comes from LinkedIn, and I'm not going to participate anymore. So it's a diminishing return on using those sorts of tools to find people and attract people. Recruiting websites that you may have, why would I go to a recruiting website if I'm doing whatever I'm doing and I'm happy doing it? I'm not going to be very interested to go look at your website. And if I go to look at your website, maybe by chance, it's probably so badly done and so non-engaging that I'm probably not going to spend more than a second before I move on to something else. You're not going to get me. And the only people you're going to get to come to your website are people desperately looking for some kind of job. And they may be okay, maybe what you want, but it's going to be a very small, it's going to be a very small number of people that actually do that. And referral programs are okay, and lots of us have referral programs, but they can easily get exhausted. Most of us have a finite number of people that we know and can recommend to other people, and if you've already recommended them and know them, you're probably pretty much done with your referrals. And you can have referrals of referrals of referrals, but everybody's doing it now, so again, it becomes sort of a diminishing return game, where am I really getting quality in terms of referrals. So you really have to do it in different ways. And if you're really looking for people, there may be ways you're going to have to find it. You can still use referrals, and there are some software technology that can enhance that process. One of them is called RollPoint, which is here. And I'm not advocating any of these technologies. They're just examples of companies that do this. There's the MOOCs that I just talked about. And MOOCs are a very good way to find people to work for you. So if you have a MOOC, let's say CCER puts on a MOOC of some sort, and people sign up to take that MOOC, well, those people might be potential people to work for you and work in your organization. And so you can track the people that signed up through email, you can find out about them, and then you can see if they might be potential hires. You can also go to co-working spaces and find the people that are working there and say, gee, maybe some of these people would be good people to work for me. And co-working spaces, you can kind of find where do people like me go? Which one of these co-working spaces? And go to those co-working spaces and actually use that potentially as a way to find people. It becomes a different game now in how you find people. And you can also use social media, which I'll show you more effectively. I think you're going to see employers are going to start making decisions based on data about people from their social media. and from how they're present on the web. So these companies like XREF and TalentBin, which has just recently been acquired by Monster, these tools actually search for people across the web and rank and rate them according to criteria that you've provided to them about the people you want. So if you're looking for people with certain criteria, if you're looking for people with certain sorts of skills, they'll actually rank those people and present them in like this is a 90% hit down to a 2% hit or whatever in terms of the attributes these people have. So there's lots of technology this is all early stuff. Pretty soon you're going to be able to say, I need somebody who can do X, and it'll say, here are 3 that are perfect for you, that fit your profile, they're in your geography, whatever it is, and you'll probably want to hire one of those. That's how good it will be. And that's coming really soon. It eliminates all things like interviewing. All the things that we do today are probably all going to be skills that are less and less useful and necessary in the next few years. And this is one that IBM just did. This is pretty fascinating. They went to a university and they took 65, I think, students. Small sample, just an experiment. 65 students, and they gave them a standard psychological personality test profile. And they got the results of that. And then they, with their permission, they went to Twitter and they got 200 tweets from each of these people and mapped those tweets against the personality profile. And they came out with a personality profile based on the tweets that these people sent. And it correlated almost perfectly with the traditional psychological profile. So with doing nothing, the people didn't even take a test. All you did is live and do your normal thing on Facebook, and yet from that, I was able to get your personality profile. And I could probably get a probability prediction at some point about your probability of being successful in doing this kind of work. All of this is going to happen this time. And I think we have to say that everything has a bad side. Everything can be used in a negative way. But on the other hand, think of the positive side of that and how you can actually help people find a much better position than they knew they could ever have. How they could really find work that was really meaningful and exciting for them because these tools help them find that work and help you find out. So these all have good things. And yeah, there's bad things too. But cars kill people too. It doesn't mean they're bad. So everything is good and bad. You still got to balance it. Candidates are more and more showcasing their skills in different ways. One that I really like, the best of all, is the infographics that young people are now using. Are you familiar with infographics? These are the pictures that give you a lot of information about things. They're just in graphs or charts or pictures. You get a quick snapshot about something, and those are called infographics. So this is a quick, brief snapshot about you, about who you are. Rather than writing a traditional CV, this is kind of a more iconographic, pictorial display of your skills and abilities. And here's what one might look like. It's a 21st century resume. And there's graphs, there's charts, I'm passionate. Here are how I rate myself in my various skills with bar charts and so forth. So I don't know if this will ever become popular or not. I don't know if this is going to be the future, but it might be. I think we just have to be aware of the fact that people are experimenting with this thing, they're thinking about this. There's a company in New Zealand that's doing what's called jobgrams, and these make iconographs out of your job descriptions. And it makes them very interesting, very exciting, really readable. It's a great company. They're doing really well. They've done work here with Deloitte and KPMG and lots of companies in Australia, taking a lot of their jobs and turning them into these very attractive pictorial descriptions about the work and what you're doing. You can embed a video in there, show somebody else who's doing the work and so forth. So these are the ways that we're going to use technology to get us all more engaged and get people more engaged instead of the old traditional static things that we've done. And what we've really done for the last decade is take what we used to be able to do with paper and put it onto the internet. The internet has so much more capability than paper, and we're just now beginning to figure out the things we could do if we didn't have paper. I subscribe to a lot of magazines digitally. And what's really interesting, for the last 3 years, they've simply been the paper magazine on my iPad. And it was fun. You flip the pages, Now I see some of them morphing completely. They don't really have pages anymore. They have all sorts of videos. They've got all sorts of little games built in. So suddenly this magazine that you find in the newsstand is sort of boring. And I've got this really interactive tool now that's the same magazine. It's called the same thing. It's similar content, but presented in a way that's much more engaging, much more interactive, and much more fun. And often allows me to comment or vote on things and gives them feedback on the quality of what they're doing. Imagine taking a textbook and turning it into that. Having, instead of textbooks, having interactive experiences for kids where they can give you feedback on things and actually participate in what's going on in that lesson, what simulations and so forth. I think we've got to start exploring this area. We say, oh, I don't know how to do that, it's super expensive, it's so much easier to just go buy a textbook. Yeah, you're right. But you have to start somewhere. You've got to start learning, you've got to start building the capabilities. You've got to go and explore it in some simple, less expensive way. But you have to kind of get started. Screening is going to be automated. Like I said, a lot of screening that we do now through things like testing and through things like interviews is going to move to either just being automatic, like that personality profile, your tweets, or it's going to be done through a variety of more engaging tools. So we're seeing a lot of things like these that automate this basically asks your friends to rate you, just like you would rate a book on Amazon, and asks you to rate you in various areas. So put your strategic capability, 5 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. Her execution ability, 1, 2, 3, or 4 stars. Now, they ask lots of people. They might ask 30 or 40 people, and all the responses are anonymous, which tends to lead to more authentic responses from people. And you'll get a profile of what your colleagues and friends think about you in terms of various skill sets. From a recruiter's perspective, it's pretty good because they know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I mean, many of us are probably, I don't want that, I don't want to know. I'm really frightened by that, I might be really upset by that. But the younger generation is saying, hey, we're all out there, it's transparent, So I suck at this, I'm really good at that, it's okay. It's a different attitude about things. And you're not going to be good at everything, you're not going to be great at everything. So it's kind of nice to have validation of where people think you are strong and where people think you're not so strong. And if you want to be strong, you know where to work and how to improve that area. You're better at it. So you've got to look at these things in different ways. These are some tools: Assertive, Remarkable Hire, and Knack are all tools that in some way or another gamify the assessment process. Knack came out of Israel. It's actually partnering with a couple of companies here in Australia right now. And what Knack does is use video simulations, for the most part, to predict your performance. So, for example, their very first one, which I think was their coolest one, was for restaurants to select bartenders. And they have a little app that asks you, one of the aspects of it, one part of the game is to ask you to identify various people, as people walk into the video, identify the drink that they're most likely to order. And looking at the people, looking at their clothes, looking at who they're with or whatever. So, oh, that's a white wine person, or that's a beer guy, or, whatever. But the better, they know that they've got data that shows that the more a bartender is able to predict what you will drink, the higher the sales revenue will be for that bar. Because that's going to, okay, Eric, yeah, I'll have one of those, right? And immediately he's engaged you. And immediately he's your buddy all of a sudden. And so a good bartender knows exactly how to do that. And so this game was really, really successful. And now they've moved on to doing this for many other jobs. So these are going to be common things, having these various games or simulations. Starbucks is using them now for store managers. There's a lot of these little simulations and games that are highly validated and correlate very highly with actual performance, because they actually gather performance data, like sales per store, based on the sales manager. And when sales managers are chosen through this tool, store sales go up 5%. And when we let you interview them, they don't go up 5%. So we're going to go through this process and we have a tangible outcome that we can validate. There's all sorts of ways of recruiting, of automating the relationship we have with our candidates. And this really gets into the candidate relationship management side of things. And this is the future of sourcing. I was talking about, that LinkedIn is going to work so well in the future, that traditional search isn't working. Lots of people aren't looking for work. The way you're going to have to get to people is through engaging them in social media and through content, getting them involved and engaged in something interesting that you're doing. And these are tools that are starting to do that. These are just examples of tools. I'll show you a picture of one in a minute here that's a little easier to understand, of tools that actually provide content. You have to provide the content. They provide the framework for you to deliver content to people that would be interested. So, for example, if you had a recruiting site that delivered information about education, or about religion, or about whatever it is that's important to your organization and the people that work in it, then the people go there not because they're looking for a job. They go there because they want information about that topic, or they want to engage in conversation about that topic. You can put up a webinar, or you can put up some sort of an activity that attracts people to your area. And they have to register for those events. And that indicates to you someone that has an interest in what you do, or has some reason that they came there to that site. And you can then follow up with those people and engage them in conversation and potentially hire those people. Right? And that's a lot better than just sort of picking up the phone and calling people at random, or searching on the internet for people you have no idea if they care about what you're doing, what you are or not. So you have to find ways to get people to come to you that aren't about recruitment, but that are about engaging them in some sort of meaningful activity. And that's what these tools help you do. One company is called Ascendify. This is a very, very new company. It's 2 years old. But basically it's about creating a community online. It's about nurturing that community. And by nurturing, means providing content, keeping people engaged, talking back and interacting with people. It provides you with referrals, or the people who come to that site provide you with referrals. And it gives you all sorts of data and information so you're smarter about who's coming, who did we actually hire, who came, was very engaging, but we never could hire them. And so you can get more of the people that you can hire and fewer of the people that you don't hire, and so forth. So you can actually make decisions because you picked it out. This tool is now being used by Zappos, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then there's another one called Smashfly, which again is very similar. It's a mobile marketing platform for candidates. And these tools are not super expensive, and they allow candidates to interact with you in engaging ways. You have to create a forum that requires work on your part. It's not automatic. You have to create content. You have to have someone who is the person that manages this whole process and curates it and communicates. But it's not that hard a job. And the results are incredible in terms of quality and quantity of people that you can get from this. Zappos is are you familiar with Zappos? It's a women's shoe company in America. It's incredibly successful because it's completely virtual. They have no retail shops. It's completely online, but you can buy as many shoes as you want at any time, and you can take them all home, try them on, and you can return them all at no cost. And you can pick one pair. You can pick one shoe one size, one shoe the other size. You can mix and match shoes. Women love this. Their average order is something like 20 pairs of shoes. I'll just try on 20 pairs. This one and this one and this one and this one. And then they get all the shoes and they try them on, and then they return, 19 of them. They buy one or two. And they're very profitable and very successful. But they're located in Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas is a great place to go have fun. It's a really lousy place to live. And it's even a worse place to work for people. So they have a very difficult time attracting any of the super talented technology people to go and work for them in Las Vegas. Because once you stop gambling, there's really not anything to do. It's in the middle of the desert. Right? And if you lose your job or don't want to work for Zappos anymore, there's not a whole lot of choices. So it's not a super attractive place. So they've struggled for a long time with getting good talent. And they finally decided to get rid of all their job postings. They have no job postings anymore. And they've created communities. And they do a lot of social media, They drive interested people, and through their customer base, they drive interested people to these communities. And they have a community for technology. They have a community for finance and accounting. They have a community for each different area. So you just say, not I'm interested in this job. You say I'm interested in this area. And you go into that area, and then there's content in there. You can have conversations. You can engage with other people that are part of that community and employees of Zappos, and learn about what they're doing in that area and what's going on. And then they reach out and say, hey, by the way, would you like to work here? And they can engage you and actually screen you for jobs. And it's very new. They've only done this for about 4 months, so it's a little early to get results. But we do a big, and I'm not giving a plug, I'm just giving information. We do a conference every year here in Sydney, Talent Management Conference. It will be in July next year. And their head of recruiting will be speaking at that conference. So by then, he'll have some pretty good data about how all this is working. So if you're interested, I can give you more details. So anyway, so that's really an interesting application and a switch now to how companies are really doing their recruiting. And you're going to see lots of this in the next few years. So recruiting websites are pretty much going away. The traditional kinds of recruiting are shrinking, and we're definitely moving into this much more engaged space. So what's possible in 3 to 5 years? I think pretty mind-blowing possibilities. I think the ability to aggregate and intelligently analyze lots of unrelated data. So you're going to be able to look at people who attended an event, people who, delivered supplies, totally unrelated sorts of things. You can look at that and say, is there any interconnection or point of interest between all those various databases? And we're starting to find lots of interesting connections between things that we never thought were there before. For example, let's say artists, wild creative artists and teaching. And maybe there's some intersection of those two fields that really pays off. Maybe that creative spark from that can help to change the educational profession and move into that. So sort of unrelated things that no one would really think about are slowly potentially going to be able to come together and be looked at. We're going to be able to look at all sorts of unstructured data. And unstructured data is everything you can't put in a spreadsheet or a database, which means most of what I just said today. It means our videos, our music, our conversation, our small talk. How do you analyze? One of the most challenging things is to take a video and then try to search it. Try to search a video. Did somebody in that video say this? Well, right now that's fundamentally impossible. But this new software just coming out from Cisco and from a company called HireVue that actually analyzes the spoken word in the video and makes it searchable. So this stuff is all becoming accessible to analysis and to data analysis, and it's opening up a whole new world of information that we've never had before. We could never really get what people were small talk, what people were saying. You couldn't analyze that. But if I can record some small talk, and then there's some way I could analyze that intelligently, what can I learn about maybe employees' opinions about this place? What they're saying informally to each other versus what they're telling me on a survey. Lots of stuff we're going to learn that you can't learn today. A lot of automation, sourcing, assessment, engagement. More and more of that's going to be done through automated tools. It's going to assist us to do that, help us to do it better, and make better sense out of it through the analysis side of it. And we're probably going to be able to literally prescribe who's going to be the best fit for a job. And I think there's no doubt in my mind that we'll be able to say that this person will be 98% probability this person will be very successful in this job as opposed to that person. And there'll be a whole lot of analysis and a lot of information based on everything we know about that person in her life. And they're going to extract that from social media. So I think what's going to happen is if you're not on social media and you're not using it, you're not going to exist. You're not going to be found, you're going to have work. Because that is going to be the source of pretty much all of the stuff we're talking about. And so you have to be out there if you want to be found, if you want to be discovered, if you want to be connected. You have to be part of that world. So I think the web is going to be your CV. And social networks will be your references. And you'll be judged by your social network. And there'll be comments about you, information, positive or negative about you and what you do and what you think and how innovative or non-innovative you are. It's all out there if you're actively engaged in social media. And everything about you, I'm going to know just from what you do. You don't have to tell me. I'll see it by tracking what you do. I know where you went. I know you travel a lot. I know you do this. I know you do that. It's all there. I see it. You don't have to tell me. I just extrapolate that to the data I know about. I think you're going to see recruiting is going to be a very different process. Today, it's a pretty traditional, transactional, stick somebody into a slot kind of a role. And I think it's going to become a much more dynamic, flexible, constantly changing approach to jobs that are constantly changing and evolving. And jobs are not, it's going to be a couple of decades, if ever, that we're going to have any, solidifying of what a job is, or what people are doing. We're going to be in a state of flux for a long time. And so, today this is what this job does, but tomorrow it does this and doesn't do that anymore. And people have to be able to deal with that agility thing. And so it's going to be, my gosh, I was looking for this, and now you tell me you want that. Well, you're going to have to be able to do that. You're going to have to be able to make those job shifts and actions. And you're going to have to do that by using every one of these tools, social networks, collaborative sourcing, and assessment, and games, and analytics. Use every single thing I've talked about. It has to be part of your toolbox in making this transformation. Now, I know none of us are going to leap to the future in one jump. But step number one, start using social media. Step number two, try to not think in such traditional ways about things. Challenge your own assumptions. Challenge your own thinking. If you think, oh, we should hire somebody like this, go check that out with a few people and see, maybe we should hire somebody like that instead. Start to trust your gut. Believe in what you feel, not what you think. Because a lot of times, like that young guy from Adelaide, I hope he goes with his gut, but not with his gut. We live in a very uncertain time. There are no right answers. And that's very scary for people, but for others, you have to have faith that you'll come out on the right side of this. And you just have to go forward, boldly, and see where it goes. And have fun on the journey, I hope. Typical worker, I think, stand up with 2 slides and done. I think you're going to see a big shift in the workplace. I don't think, I know you're going to see it. Within just a very short period of time. The average Gen Y, the earliest Gen Y right now, is about 32 years old. So in a couple more years, it'll be around 35 mark. There'll be, many of them will have not ever had a normal permanent job for a long period of time, or they will have had many of those quote-unquote normal permanent jobs along the way. They really are going to be assessed by their network. And already, they don't really care what you say about them. They're much more care about what their friends and colleagues and other people say about them. And they have a pretty good built-in barometer about that from their social networks. They find work in very different ways. They use marketplaces and online sites and peer networks and referrals, and they use the social networks to find work. They typically don't go to traditional ways to find work. They do use search engines. They do go to job boards sometimes. But that may just be to kind of see what's out there. Where they're really getting their jobs is probably through their friends and their network and talking to people and saying, hey, did you know about this opportunity over here? That would be a really cool thing for you to do. And that's how they're finding jobs. I think you're going to see that recruiting is more about matching fit and what you need right now, knowing that what you need right now is going to be different than what you're going to need tomorrow. So it's going to be a constantly changing game. And a lot of what we know about people is going to come from the tools they wear. The phone you carry in your pocket, the Fitbit that tracks how many steps you take every day, the various tools that we're all wearing or will be wearing in the very near future are going to tell you a lot about people and what they do. Young people are going to want to cycle between different kinds of projects, long-term and short-term. And one of the big things, they don't really want a traditional boss. They want to just be guided. They want a coach. They want a mentor. They want some end point that they're supposed to get to, and then maybe help to get to that end point. Okay? But don't tell me every little thing I should do all the way along this process, unless I ask you. A little different. Okay? Self-learning, huge. Expectation, more and more. Not necessarily a conscious thing. I don't think people just say, I think I'll learn by myself on this. It's just, that's the easiest way to do it. A couple of years ago, I couldn't cook a thing. I barely could make toast. Now I'm not too bad, and you know why? Because of the internet. I can say, gee, I'd love to make a scrambled egg. I have no clue how to make one. My wife isn't home. I go on the internet, I got a video on how to make a scrambled egg. And so pretty soon, I now can make scrambled eggs and a whole bunch of things because I learned by myself. But I never said, I think I'll go learn myself. I mean, I kind of said, I'll see if I can figure out how to do it on the internet. And that's how so many of us are learning about everything. So it's not about, I watch people my age. They'll say, I just bought a new computer. I think I'll take a course. I go, why would you take a course? Why don't you just go online and experiment and watch a video or something about how to do it? And that's every young person. They don't take a course. They just figure out how to do it. But people my age, we want to take a course. Because we were programmed that you should go to school and have the course. Maybe get a certificate. I'm a certified person. I can't do a thing, but I got a certificate. Right? I have one for Excel workshop. I can barely open Excel, but I have a certificate. Measure of success is peer respect. Do my peers respect me? Not does my boss like me? Have I achieved my goals? Do I perform well? They're much more self-aware and self-confident than I think we were, than I was. And again, performance is going to be measured very differently by their social web, how many friends they have, how well they get new gigs or new projects to work on. Those are going to be measures of their successfulness. And the workplace, obviously, is just about anywhere. It makes no difference. I just met last night with a young girl who's starting a company here, which is a equivalent of freelancer. It's where people that don't want to work on a permanent job find work. But this is designed for people 20 and under. And it's for those kind of jobs. She's partnering with NAC to do the assessment piece. And the entire thing is completely automated, no people at all involved in it. There's no interviews involved. You're assessed automatically. And there's people have posted jobs, and I put up that I'm interested, and the match is made and the job is offered. And that sort of thing is the future. It's a very different approach than we have, a very slow and traditional way. So with that, I thank you very much. I'd love to answer any questions.
Okay, so any questions? Just raise your hands and I'll bring over the microphone.
Or comments?
Comments?
Hi, Brooke Scarf from CCER. I have a question about what your thoughts might be on social cohesion, because there seems to be a very different divide between, for want of a better way of putting it, the haves and the have-nots as these things move forward. And so what would you suggest are some of the solutions to the perhaps growing difficulties in creating a more cohesive society?
That's a big question. I'm not sure I'm an expert enough to answer it, really. And I don't know that anybody probably has a full picture of it. But there's a lot of theories that I know are out there. There's a couple of academics that I know that have done a little thinking in this. They think there may be a big return, so to speak, to the lifestyle of the previous century, of the 19th century, of more of a family-centric lifestyle, community-centric lifestyle, where people can work and earn money anyhow, anywhere, but they may choose to do that in a community that might be rural, it might be dispersed, it might be a neighborhood in a city. We're seeing in San Francisco clearly the growth of fairly cohesive neighborhoods where people are moving into these neighborhoods that are very much alike, maybe do similar kinds of things, are friends with each other, go to the same coffee shops and restaurants. It's, if you were, in America at least, back in the turn of the 19th century, in the 18th and 19th century, the neighborhoods of New York City were sort of like that. They were vibrant neighborhoods of Italian, Polish, and German people who pretty much stayed in their neighborhood. But there was everybody knew everybody. There was a lot of family connections. The shopkeepers knew all the kids, and all this sort of very close kind of social cohesion. And we've, in the 20th century, we turned social cohesion into a small, narrow, very narrow family unit and work. And those are pretty much our social world. And I think what may happen is that social world changes a lot. It becomes much bigger, more extended, quote-unquote, families, or even neighborhoods of people who kind of live and work together in different ways. I don't know. I'm just saying that's one possibility. But I think there's a lot of things going on in society. I don't know if any of you heard of Dr. Paige Adams. There's a movie that Robin Williams was in, actually. What's it called? Patch. Yeah, Patch. By the way, Paige hates that word, Patch. But anyway, he's a real person. He's an actual living human being. And he's devoted his whole life to community and community medicine and community everything. And he lives in a commune. And he said, I've lived in a commune since I was 24 years old. My kids grew up in the commune, and I've lived in it, and there's no unemployment in the commune. Because we all take care of each other. And it doesn't make any difference who's working, who's not working. Somebody's always working, somebody's always not working. And it's totally okay. We don't have this concept of ownership. This is mine, this is yours. It's all ours. As a big extended family, we share completely. And he's a huge advocate of commons. If you hear him speak, it's very, very engaging the way he talks about this. But he's saying we need to change our structure of society. It's not a healthy structure in his mind. It's created disease, it's created psychosis, it's created all kinds of psychological issues that we don't need to have if we just simply learn to live with each other and share and just be a little bit more open to that connectivity that all human beings have with each other. So those are some ideas I think that are happening. I don't think it will be as catastrophic as we might think it is. I think we're probably going to look back, somebody will look back a couple hundred years from now and say, imagine how they lived back then. God, that must have been horrible. I really think they're going to say that.
Hello, I'm Jane. We work in industrial relations, so sometimes we see the other side of employees misusing social media and saying things that then come back to bite them in years to come, and how you manage that. Have you got any sort of thoughts around if that's going to be there forever, be found in search engines, recruiters are going to see it, employers are going to see it? I guess what advice do you have for the employees around how to actually manage their profile? It seems like it's going to be really important.
I mean, I think maybe there's room for some coaching around some of that, just some good practices or not so good practices around using social media. In the early days of social media, it was like any new thing. It was abused or misused. I think a lot of the stories were blown out of proportion, all horrible things that happened to people. I think a lot of that was more mythology than reality, or a little thing blown way out of proportion to what it really was. But like anything, there will be some bad players and bad actors. Everything in life is like that. Okay? There's no way we're going to avoid it. But, I think most people, and certainly young people in school right now, are being actually given guidance about social media. I know in most U.S. schools, even in elementary school, children are given things about what to do and not do on Facebook. If a young girl gets an email from somebody she doesn't know, don't answer. They're being taught these things right now in school. So they're going to grow up being very sophisticated using, they already are very sophisticated using social media, way ahead of most of us. And they're usually the ones that teach us, don't open that email, that's scam, or whatever it is. So they are very, very knowledgeable about things. So I'm not very worried about it, but I think employers can offer some coaching and guidance around some of that. And don't approach misuses as criminal offenses. just learning experiences, unless it happens numerous times. The first few times, it's more of a, don't do that again kind of thing. So,
How do you see the role of manager changing in the future given the new agile workforce?
well, I think number one, we're going to need a lot fewer of them. I think we probably have way too many managers. It's been a way of rewarding people for following the rules and living a long time, not necessarily for any really useful purpose. When you really look at organizations like the Catholic Church of England, that has a very small hierarchy for the size of the church. They don't have lots and lots and lots of 50 levels of managers. Telstra has more managers than the Catholic Church. So how do you run a huge organization like that without all these managers? Because you don't really need those managers. What you need, in effect, are people who know what they're doing and have transparent access to information and knowledge. The primary purpose of a manager in most traditional companies was to filter information. If the CEO decided something, he would tell him, he was a VP, and he'd tell her because she's a director, and she would tell him because he's a manager, and the manager would tell the workers what to do. So that was an easier way to transfer information. Today, there's absolutely no need for that. You can just put that on the internet, send out a memo, send an email, it's instantaneous, it's done. There's no need for those folks involved in the So the managers that do exist to me would be coaches and mentors who are people that can guide, provide answers, coach people how to do things, provide some new skills to people. That's going to be the real role of the manager. And I define a leader who's successful as, and I think this is the emerging definition of leadership. It's the ability to build and maintain a team that is successful over time. If you can do that, I think you are a very good leader. It's not about doing any particular technical kind of work. It's about building a team of people, attracting and hiring a team of people, and making that team very, very successful at what they do, and maintaining that ability over a long period. If you can do that, then I think you are an outstandingly good leader. And it doesn't require a lot of the things we normally attribute to leadership. Great vision and charisma. I mean, maybe that's a component of it sometimes. But what's really good, can you put together a good team of people? And you and I all know if you're on a team that works well, you can accomplish miracles. And if you're on a lousy team, you can't get hardly anything done because there's always somebody in the midst of that team. So a good leader removes the people that aren't part of the team and makes sure that team functions well. There's a book in the U.S. written by a Stanford professor, which has a somewhat inappropriate title. It's called The No Asshole Rule. And it's been a very popular book. It's a good book to read. His research around leadership led pretty much what I just said. He said the most important role of a leader is to remove the assholes as quickly as possible because they do irreparable damage every day. And so I think that, companies that really have leaders who make sure people work well together, build these reviews, that's the future. And that's what management really is. It's not about passing information or regulating things or controlling. You have to get rid of that whole notion of control and regulation. It's about transparency. It's about openness. It's about engaging and empowering people to do whatever it is they can do and helping them do that better. That's what it's really about. I know that sounds really idealistic and very grandiose. But when I look at the companies, even like Facebook and those that are doing really well, that's exactly how they do. Exactly how Google operates. They're all in teams. They're all basically leaderless teams. You could never tell who was the leader of most of these teams. They may kind of informally appoint somebody as their leader, but it's more for efficiency than it is out of any necessity. It's really different.
Thank you very much for what you've said on the education area, so the catechist who go into public schools what we're trying to do is actually map out for kids the pressures, like the stream in which they're standing, just to know what currents are guiding them. Are you aware of anywhere the topics that you've spoken about that outline or map clearly for the kids what's actually happening? Because you made that comment between knowledge and like a professor actually understanding how to actually use that knowledge. So are you aware of any kind of existing resources that actually map out what's happening at the moment, the trends that the kids need to know about so they can guide their own way?
That's a really, really good question. I can't just off the top of my head anything that does that, but that's really thoughtful. That somebody should come up with something like that if it doesn't exist. It may. Yeah. But I think you hit something that's very important. The kids can probably, given the right information and the right guidance, can pretty much choose what's right for them without a whole lot of structure. I used to be a teacher. I taught for almost 10 years at high school level. And I left it because I couldn't stand the profession. And I felt totally stymied by administration and everything else. And I said, I've had enough. But one of the things I disliked the most was the prescribing of what kids should do. And of categorizing them that he's smart and she's stupid. Hate that. And I said, none of that makes any sense to me. But it was sort of the way it's done. And I think kids have an incredible ability to know what they're focused, what they're interested in, what they're good at. And all they really need is guidance to help them turn that into something meaningful for them or useful. But I don't know what maps are trying to do. Oh, you are?
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you more about that.
Sorry, just one more question, sorry. The statistics you had before, I think, about the sort of balance in the labour market in terms of the employers perceiving it to be the employees having all the power. Was that survey from the employer's perspective or?
That was from the employer.
Employer's perspective. Do you know of anything that's from the employee's perspective, where they see it?
I don't know of any quantitative survey that's been done. I know anecdotally they probably wouldn't feel the same way. I think they would still feel that it was pretty much the employer telling them what they should do.
Yeah, I guess because I was just thinking in terms of maybe if they see it the other way, it would lead to them, I guess, becoming far more creative in how they might market themselves for particular positions. Yeah.
I think the ones that are really, I guess like everything, it's kind of a curve, right? The ones out here at the innovative edge of that curve, they're kind of doing that already. They're very much able to, and know that they can dictate the trends that they want within reason. And they know that they can switch between, in Silicon Valley where I live, between Facebook, Google, Twitter, 5 other companies every other day if they want, because they all want their skill and they're all competent. But they don't go that often. They do go, but not quite that often. And the reason they go is because they're not doing a project or work that's really challenging and exciting, or they're not learning. They don't feel like they're learning. But when they go under their conditions, both leaving and arriving at the other company. So there is a lot of that. I think this is probably driven more by that end of the spectrum than it is by the middle. Because the middle of the spectrum, I'm sure,